la patria de Kant, algunos están volviendo a matar a la razón otra vez. Están matando a la razón pura y a la razón práctica.
In Kant's homeland, some are killing reason again. They are killing pure reason and practical reason. They are killing pure reason because they resent what practical reason says. In other words, they want to change the dogma because they are bothered by the moral and ethical consequences of that dogma. And they do so by putting forward arguments that are not only weak, but so ridiculous that they offend reason. I repeat again, in Kant's homeland, at least some are killing once again the reason. What am I referring to? I am referring to the German Synod. Cardinal Brandmüller said this week that the path of the German Synod is a path that leads to schism and that it implies it carries with it a heresy. Cardinal Brandmüller is a German historian.
El cardenal Miller, un gran teólogo, también alemán, ha dicho...
Cardinal Müller, a great theologian, also a German, has said, using a masterful comparison, that in the German Synod they are more afraid of dogma than the devil is of holy water. Müller has a good sense of humor. They are more afraid of dogma than the devil is of holy water. But in addition, of course I agree with them, they have lost their minds. The arguments they use are so ridiculous, so absurd, that they do not hold up. They cannot be defended even with the slightest intellectual rigor. If Kant were to raise his head, he would die of indignation when he saw what some people are doing in his homeland.
Por ejemplo, ellos que están diciendo, los que defienden los cambios.
For example, they are saying, those who defend the changes promoted by the German Synod, they are saying that the reason why so many people leave the church every year, at least 300,000 a year, that it is because the church does not accept the things the world is asking for. The priesthood of married men, priestesses, papacies, or women bishops, well, the gender ideology with all its content, the blessing of marriage for gay couples. For that reason, they say people are leaving the church. That is their argument. Lately, they have repeated it over and over again. But if that were so, the logical thing, what reason says, is that those people, those Catholics who leave their church, would go to the Lutheran Church, because the Lutheran Church has, of course, married priests, but it also has homosexual priests, gays or lesbians, who live with their partners. They bless gay couples without any problem. That is to say, what the Catholic Church rejects, and which the Lutheran Church already has, is the reason why Catholics leave their church in such a massive way, according to these German synodalists. The normal thing, therefore, would be that by leaving the Catholic Church, they would swell the ranks of the Lutheran Church, and that this one would be growing every year. That is what reason and common sense say, but that is not so, and they know it. And even though they know it, they continue to say the same thing, because deep down, they know perfectly well that they are not right. For example, in 2016, there were among Catholics, they know very well how many they are, because he who does not pay is not Catholic. There were among Catholics 23.6 million people. Well, 1 year later, those 23.6 million were reduced to 23.3 million people. They lost 300,000 Catholics in 1 year. And what happened to the Protestants? In 2016, the same year, there were 21.9 million Lutherans, Protestants in general, not only Lutherans. But the following year, they became 21.5 million. That is to say, the Lutherans not only did not increase with the Catholics who left their church, but they lost more. If in 1 year the Catholics lost 300,000 people, the Lutherans, who accept everything, the Lutherans lost 400,000. They talk about the vocation crisis. There are no vocations. Young people do not enter the seminary, they say, because they cannot marry. But what about the Protestants? In that same year, the data are as follows. In the year 99, 975 Lutheran pastors were ordained, and I use the term ordination, so to speak, because they do not accept the sacrament of holy orders. But among those 975, there were men, women, and even lay people whom they call ministers of communion. Well, I don't know if it is the equivalent of extraordinary ministers of the Eucharist among Catholics. 975. Well, that same year, Catholics ordained 214 priests. But in 2016, the Protestants, I repeat putting it in quotation marks, ordained 322. The number of ordinations had been reduced by 67%. In that same year, 2016, Catholics ordained 77 priests, a big reduction from 214 to 77, but it had dropped by 64.1%. That is, the drop in ordinations among Protestants on the same dates had been 67% by 64%. More pastors were being ordained in the Lutheran Church than priests were being ordained in the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church accepting only men, requesting them to practice chastity. They will practice it or not, depending on the case, but requesting them to practice chastity, accepting only men. The Lutherans who accept men, women, who ordain even lay people, have decreased their vocations much more, or at least more than the Catholics. Not only do Catholics who leave their church not go to the Lutheran Church, but Lutherans lose more. They lose more faithful and they lose more pastors. How can they say then that the cause of people leaving the church is that the church does not accept this package of measures that the Lutherans already have? I repeat, if Kant were to raise his head, he would die again of disappointment to see what some are doing with reason in his homeland. Comparing to Goya, I would dare to say, as Goya said in the title of one of his etchings, of one of his engravings, the dream of reason produces monsters. Here I think it is necessary to say that the abandonment or the ridiculing of reason produces monsters. In reality, and they know it, the cause of people abandoning the Catholic or Lutheran Church is the religious tax. They require them to pay a tax. If they don't want people to leave and let them apostatize, because officially they have to, if they don't want people to leave, let them stop forcing them to pay that tax. Let it be a voluntary thing. They will not pass that way, and they will not go through because they will lose the large amount of money they receive every year. If they think, and I am sure that this is just an excuse, that Catholics will not live once the Catholic Church becomes Protestant, they're mistaken in view of what is happening with the Protestants. In reality, what matters is not the number, or at least that does not have to be the most important thing. What matters here is to be faithful to Jesus Christ, to confess His divinity, which implies accepting His message in its entirety, that His message cannot be changed. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away, said the Lord. To accept the divinity of Jesus Christ means to accept that message, accept tradition, and accept the magisterium of the Church. It is not just another voice, as several bishops have said recently. It is not just another opinion. It is the magisterium of the Church, and it is the magisterium not only for them, the very old-fashioned John Paul II, or the no less old-fashioned Benedict XVI, German, but the magisterium of Pope Francis, with the recent document on the prohibition of homosexual unions. That is what it's all about, to faithfully follow Jesus Christ, to accept Him as true God and true man with all the consequences. That is what it's all about. And if that is done, I do not know if the abandonments will continue or not. Of course, to say that they leave for that reason is ridiculous. What I do know is that those who stay will love their church and will support her economically, making the sacrifice they have to make without caring about paying whatever they have to pay, because they will have found in the church what they are looking for, the way that leads them to God, the way, the salvation that brings them closer to Jesus Christ, through that church that Christ Jesus Himself has founded. The dream of reason, the derangement and abandonment of reason produces monsters. In Germany, they are already on that path. The synodal path is becoming an abandonment of reason. See you next week, God willing.